Hey there, it's Wendy Wiseman Fisher. I learned some things after I recorded the last podcast, one of which is not to use my squeaky office chair, and the other of which is not to fold my hands and clasp them right next to the microphone. So I'm going to try podcasting this way today. In case this is your first time listening, what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is read through one of the reflective journaling structures that I offer my clients and my class participants. I haven't done any thinking about this. This is totally off the cuff and spontaneous, and you'll get to hear me as I sort of think about these questions just as if I was a participant in one of my own reflective journaling sessions, except instead of writing things down, I'm going to talk out loud with my mouth. So this structure is from my productivity series. It's productivity number 5, and it's called Affinity. And Affinity is mostly about things that come easily to you, that you find pleasurable for, that you do without much resistance. So let's get started. The first question is, in which tasks do you find the most affinity, ease, and pleasure? I really love brainstorming. I like reading. I like cooking. I like decluttering, and I like talking one-on-one with people. I like taking naps. I really like coffee dates. I love sitting over breakfast with one other person. And I love writing. And I really like getting into the flow of a project, pushing myself right to the limit of my ability and sitting there on the edge. Time just fades away as I get into this sense of flow, and I feel really productive, and I feel like I'm learning, and I feel like I'm growing as a person, and it makes me feel this real sense of success and pride. So the next question is, at what kinds of tasks do you really shine? I would say that I'm doing well when I'm leading a workshop or a class, because I feel very focused and I feel really caring, and I just want to make sure that everyone is getting something out of it, and that I'm not imposing too much of my own force or directiveness, but I'm still providing a space and a structure and a time for people to think or to learn new things, or to sort of reveal who they are, or find a source of inspiration, or at the very least feel encouraged and supported and thought of, and I want them to feel like someone thinks well of them, and that's me. I'm also pretty good at smashing two ideas together to see what new thing might emerge, and I'm pretty good at composing, and I'm really good at making like short virtual presentations that are resources for other people. So I'm also really good at providing a structure for my son to follow as he gets ready for his school day, and teaching him to be independent and to make his own decisions in all of life, but especially with regard to that morning structure, has been something I felt I'm doing really well at. Okay, the next question is, which angles of approach truly engage you? Ooh, I like to think about things from different angles. I try to do things upside down, or, excuse me, backwards, or I like to give myself creative constraints, like, can I write this passage without using the letter E? Or can I compose a piece for the piano that uses only the left hand? Or can I create a structure a structure for reflective journaling that phrases things in the positive instead of focusing on problems and negativity? And I like considering a task as part of an overall complex system, kind of like this ecosystem of what's going on, and applying permaculture techniques to that, no matter what kind of challenge or opportunity or concept it is. So I like to include things like redundancy to the system so that something will work. I like to give it lots of background, and I like to give edges of things a chances to collide and come up with something new. And I like to plan for the life cycle of growing up, and to provide layers for new things to grow up as other things die off naturally, as other things regrow and die down for the winter. Those are angles of approach that I find fascinating and creative, and that will inspire me to work on something that I might not otherwise work on, like housework or money management, or things that are icky to me. So the next question is, when during the day or evening is your mind most ready to work? I know this one. I am most ready to work between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. That's kind of my sweet spot for being alert and ready to go and full of energy. And by that time, I've usually had a cup or two of coffee. Maybe I've eaten a little bit of breakfast and done some movement so my back doesn't hurt. And unfortunately, during the school year, which just recently started for me, I need to get my son up by 7 and walk him to school and come back. And that takes away a large chunk of my most productive time. And by the time I've walked him to and from school, I've had all these interpersonal interactions, and I've been active, and I come back tired. And it can be a little hard to get back into that groove of productive work. So I'm trying to think of little ways to get around that don't involve skipping that time, because I really treasure the walking time as a time when I walk with my son, because his little hand slips into mine and we chat, and I really get to know what's going on with him and connect with him in positive ways. And I like the time I spend with the moms at school, getting to know them and hearing what's going on in their lives. So that's a little thing I'm trying to be creative about and figure out. And I usually have a second wind in the afternoon, which coincidentally is when my son comes home from school. So the next thing is, under what conditions do you achieve a sense of flow? And flow is described here as time fades away and you are absorbed and effective. So I already mentioned working to the edge of my ability and using different angles of approach. Those are really ways to get me into a sense of flow. Another thing is being inspired by a new idea that a book or a person has taught me, and trying to apply that new information to a project. Like, if I learn a new narrative structure, I want to write it and see how it falls out and see how I can improve and see what's coming out. Or if I learn a new way to lead congregational singing, I want to try it. I want to see how it supports them. I want to see what happens, and I want to see what kind of beauty will result. If I learn a new permaculture gardening technique, I want to get out in the dirt and put that new thing into practice and bend my mind to see how that would relate to the other things going on in the garden. And of course, there's just diving into a project with a timer, because if I know that I only have 20 minutes to work on it, I am going to go hard and I'm going to go fast. And that time constriction will function as working at the very edge of my ability, so that also plunges me into a state of flow. So next I'm going to ask, which tasks easily engage you? Writing, building on a project, considering the products of a 30-minute mindstorm when I just brainstorm for 30 minutes and I fill out like 4 or 6 pages with my ideas, and I go to the edge of the paper and I look at my most unusual ideas, not the sort of conventional ideas that congregate at the center of the mindstorm or the mind mapping, but the sort of loosely related stuff that shows up at the edge of the paper. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was thinking about wellness, and I started off with food and movement and sleep and de-stressing techniques, and all the way at the edge, my thought about yoga turned into meditation, and that turned into yoga philosophy, and that turned into the yamas and niyamas of yoga, which are kind of like the 10 Commandments, but for yoga and from yoga's perspective, which involves things like ahimsa, which is nonviolence toward all beings, and cleanliness, and so forth. So when I look at something like that, I'm like, oh, maybe instead of working on my movement, I could work on ahimsa, which is nonviolence toward myself and all beings, and maybe that will ease me toward wellness in a way that works better for me. So that's the kind of task that really easily engages me. Here's the next question. It says, how can you spend the bulk of your time working on these sorts of tasks? Now here I kind of have a leg up. In a practical sense, my husband brings home the money we need to live, to have a house, to have groceries, to have some fun experiences out, to have everything we need to live a well-supplied, pleasant little lifestyle, which frees me up to spend time with my son and to work on my own projects. And I recognize this as an extraordinary privilege. Earlier in my life, I was impoverished. I lived in extreme conditions of poverty. And before that, I was in a household that had some really fierce domestic abuse. So to me, this place of being in good relationship and a safe house and a house that is supplied with everything I need to be fed and comfortable and to achieve these sort of material pleasures is an incredible gift, and I try to never take it for granted, even as it becomes my new normal. So I get a chance to spend the bulk of my time approaching my projects and my interpersonal interactions and my family time and my friendship time and my time with my clients creatively, with no sense that my livelihood is in danger. If I fail at something, I'm still going to have food, I'm still going to have air conditioning, I'm still going to have time with the people I love. So for me, it's a simple matter of blocking movie streaming services or making sure to turn off my phone when I want to work, scheduling time to work, and making sure that I don't just coast around on social media or vegetating in front of a TV show or playing lots of video games to the detriment of my productive time. And the second to last question is, how can you build these techniques into your work? And I think something I need to remove from my approach is feeling this need to be socially conventional, to impose like, oh, we need rigor and we need a linear approach, and this needs to be logical, and this needs to be very sort of left-brained in order to be credible. So I've got to really put in this sort of scholarly effort. Now, I love scholarship. Reading and thinking and critical analysis are my jam. But I also see a lot of benefits in this sort of lateral, liminal, daydreaming, thought bubbly thinking that happens when I'm playful or relaxed or comfortable or bored, because sometimes insights just come out of the blue, and a little problem that I've been thinking about on the back burner, a solution just blooms into being. And I'm like, oh, of course, this makes sense. I wonder why I didn't think of it before, or this is a genius idea. And the last question is, how can I sustain them? So, I don't know, maybe some mantra work like value the right brain, or maybe just a reminder that my approach to creation and to teaching and to coaching is valuable and a good contribution, and that nobody else can do it like I can, and therefore I'm unique and I have a special gift, and I've also got a bit of product differentiation which might help me in the market. So just acknowledging the worth of my process and not being afraid of it, and not trying to line up to some societal and self-imposed restrictions of behavior, especially since my approach doesn't hurt anybody. It might be especially beneficial for the people who are ready to listen and find an affinity with me, and just that I deserve a chance to live my life in a way that I have an affinity for, that in which there's no like artificial resistance and I'm feeling like I'm not enough because I can't or don't blossom when I'm trying to line myself up with the conventional. So maybe posting little sticky notes, or maybe setting reminders on my phone, or maybe having a desktop wallpaper with a mantra that reminds me, like a soundbite of information. Maybe making little songs that I can sing to myself while I wash the dishes, or I'm in the shower, or I'm decluttering, or making the bed, or going for a walk, or asking friends to remind me, like if they see me going all rigid and anxious about doing things, the right way. Well, that was kind of cool. Thank you for listening. I don't have my little ending blurb in front of me, so I'm going to do the best I can. The really important thing is that you go to our reflective journaling community on Facebook, which you can look up just as Reflective Journaling Community, and you can find the Reflective Journaling website at reflectivejournaling.net. And this podcast is a pay what you want resource. I hope you find it useful. And there are links to my PayPal Addy on the reflectivejournaling.net website. So I do encourage you to hop over there, take a look around, look at our events, look at our digital resources like printables, and just get to know this little seed of a movement that's getting started, and to try reflective journaling at home. Signing out for now. Have a wonderful day.